Alright, maintenance, 255.701, scope. Alright, 255.703 to 757 the part describe minimum requirements of maintenance of pipeline facilities. Alright, general. No person may operate with a segment of the pipeline unless maintained in accordance with this part. Each segment of the pipeline may become unsafe and must be replaced, repaired, or removed from service. The provisions, section 705, 706, 709, 711, 713, 715, 717, 719 parts shall pertain as applicable to all of the transmission line and distribution mains operating at 125 psi gauge more than class 3 or 4 locations. Transmission lines and patrolling. Each operator shall have the patrol program observe the service condition of the adjacent transmission line right away of the distribution line away of the distribution operates at 125 miles psi or more. Class 3 or 4 lake location indicate leak, corrosive action authors, factors affecting safety operation, frequencies, the determinant side of the line of the operating pressure of the class, location, terrain, whether the other relevant factors, intervals between patrols. No being no longer prescribed the following tables: one or two class locations over the month, at least twice each calendar year, 15 months at least once each calendar year. Class 3, 4.5 months, at least 4 times each calendar year, 7.5 months, but at least 12 twice each calendar year. Class 4, 4.5 months, at least 4 times each calendar year, 4.5 months, but at least 4 times each calendar year. Transmission line leakage survey. Leakage survey each for the transmission line distribution main operating at 125 psi and more in class 3 or 4 locations must be conducted in intervals 19 and 15 months, at least once each calendar year. Least located but investigated promptly. Necessary to action shall be taken in accordance with section 255, 805, and 807 of this part. Line markers are main transmission lines. Except for the provided subdivision C, but the line marker must be placed, maintained closed to place practical over the buried main of the transmission line, each for the crossing of the public road, railroad, navigable water, whatever each for the necessary identified location of the main transmission line, reduce the possibility with damage interference. Line marks are not recover the buried with the mains for class 3 and 4 locations. Damage prevention program effect with the 255-614 with the part line marker. Those are not required. Buried transmission line class 3 and 4 placements. Markers and practical line markers must be placed, maintained along each section of the main line transmission line located above ground. An area accessible to the public. Following must be legible. The background sharply contrast color each line with the other main. Waters inward, caution danger of foul with the gas. Name of the pipeline, all which will accept the marks in heavily developed urban areas must at least once each highway of 1/4 in stroke. Name of the operator, telephone number include area code where the operator can be reached at all time. Each line marker and navigable water have the following characteristics: single rectangular shape, the narrow strip along the edge of the colored internal national orange area between level and sign and boundary stripes colored white right in the single block system. Warning, caution, danger. Above the words do not anchor or drive the word gas pipeline crossing. The name of the operative, telephone number including area code the operator can be reached at all times. Overcast delay, the signs of the visible written required. Paragraph 2 subdivision legible approaching passing vessel that may damage or interfere with the pipeline. Transmission lines record keep each operator shall keep records of each of the leak record discovered repair made line break as long as the segment of the transmission and distribution main operating 120 psi gauge or more in class 3 for a location involved remain service. Transmission line general requirement the prepares procedure temporary repairs. Each operator may be immediate temporary measure to protect the public whenever the leak or the imperfection damage the serviceability found segment of the tree line transmission distribution main operating 25 psi gauge or more in class 3 or 4 location not feasible to make permanent repair at the time of the discovery. Permanent repairs operator must make a permanent repair of the pipeline system according to the following non-integrity management repair of the operator make, but a permanent repairs is feasible. Integrity management repairs operator discover the condition of the pipeline covered in subpart O of the gas transmission pipe. Integrity management operator must remediate if the condition is prescribed in 255-933 with its part welded patch except the provided 255-717B3 with the part. No operator may be used welded patch as a means of repair. Our transmission permanent field repair imperfect damages. Each imperfect damage impaired with the serviceability segment of the other steel transmission line distribution main operating 125 psi more in class 4, 3, or 4 location may be in accordance with the following requirements. Feasible leak strength of the surface imperfection damage must be to remove the cutting out of the cylindrical piece of the pipe and replacing it with a pipe similar with a greater design strength. It is not feasible to take a segment of the surface imperfection damage and repair with a method of reliable engineering testing and analysis that it cannot be permanently restored serviceability of the type. If the segment is not taken out, surface operating pressure must be reduced to a safe level during the repairing operations. Alright, transmission lines of the permanent field repair of welds. Each weld that is unacceptable under Section 255, 241 of this part must be repaired in accordance with the following requirements. If feasible to take a segment of the transmission line of distribution main operating at 150 to 25 psi gauge or more in class 3 or 4 locations outside of the weld may be repaired in accordance with the applicable requirements of 255 to 245 of this part. Weld may be repaired in accordance with 255 245 of the part. Wall segment in surface of the weld is not leaking the pressure segment and is reduced if it does not produce strength more than 20 psi system yielded strength. Grinding the defect of the area can be limited to 1/8 of the thickness of the pipe weld remains. Defective weld can be repaired in accordance with the subdivision A and B, but must be repaired installing the full encirclement weld split and the sleeve with appropriate design. Transmission line permanent field repair leaks. Permanent field repair leak with the transmission line distributing operating at 125 psi in class 3 or 4 location must be made according to the following requirements. Feasible segment must be taken out with the repair cutting of the cylindrical piece with replacing it with a pipe similar greater design strength. It's not feasible to take out a segment of the surface of the repair of the must be made with the following methods: full encirclement weld and split sleeve and appropriate design. If the leak is due to the corrosion pitting, repair must be made installing properly designed bolt-on leak clamp. If the leak is due to the corrosion pit on a pipe, the system yields strength is not more than 40,000 psi of the repair may be made fillet welding a steel plate patch round corner same greater thickness of the pipe no more than 1/2 the diameter of the pipe in size. Any apply a method of reliable engineering testing analyst shall be permanently restore the serviceability of the pipe. Our transmission line testing and repair. Segment of transmission line distribution main operating 125 psi and more in class 3 or 4 location repaired cutting out of the damaged portion of the pipe. The some of the replacement pipe must be tested pressure required with the new line installed at the same location. Testing may be made on pipe before installed provided non-restricted testing and move the meeting requirements section 255, 243 of the parts made of the field girth. But welds after the installation of emergency pipe with retained stock and test must be forwarded. It says origin 90% of the system used strength 1.5 times the certified operating pressure, whichever the less such pressure pipe is properly marked and test recorded to retain each repair made welded, but welded in accordance with 255, 713, 715, 717 part examined in accordance with the section 241 of this part. Our distribution system leak repair. Mechanical leak repair clamps installed after January 27, 2009 may not be the permanent repair method of plastic pipe. Distribution system patrolling. Frequency patrolling must be determined the severity of the condition caused by the failure of leakage, consequently a hazard to public safety. The mains of the place, the structure, the anticipated physical movement, the external loading caused by the close failure leakage must patrol with intervals not exceeding 4.5 months, but at least 4 times each calendar year. Distribution line with 125 psi gauge or more, class 3, 4 location will comply with transmission patrolling requirements section 255, 705 of this part. Distribution system leak surveys and procedures. Each operation distribution should provide a periodic leak survey and operating maintenance plan. Leaks located with the survey shall be investigated properly necessary action according with section 285, 805, 807 of this part. Type and scope of the leak control programs must be determined. The nature of the operation, local conditions must meet with the following minimum requirement. The leakage survey, the leak detector equipment is conducted within intervals of not exceeding 15 months, but at least once each calendar year. In business with the district operating gas franchise areas, including testing atmospheric gas, electrical, telephone, sewer, water system, manholes, has cracks, pavement, curb line, in sidewalk, other location, provide opportunity finding gas leaks. Leakage survey of the distribution system outside of the business district must be frequently necessary, but at least once every 5 calendar years, interval of not exceeding 63 months. The operator employs the leakage story of the determined area of the active corrosion leakage survey. Frequency shall be at least once every 3 calendar years. That interval is not exceeding 39 months of the main surface line. Distribution lines operating at 125 psi gauge more, located in the class 3 or 4 locations, must comply with the transmission and leakage survey requirements of section 255, 706 of this part. Test requirements reinstating service lines, except as provided in subdivision E of the section. Each disconnected service line may be tested in accordance with the section before being reinstated. Provisions are made to maintain continuous service test installation bypass any part of the original service line. Maintain continuous service need not be tested. Limited test should be in accordance with the section 255, 511G of this part. For each service line operated with a pressure not more than 20 psi gauge, the test pressure for the 50 psi gauge 3 times the maximum operating pressure, whichever the greater. For each service line operated with more than 20 psi gauge, more than 60 psi gauge, the test pressure should be 90 90 psi gauge. For each of the limit type operated more than 60 psi gauge, test pressure shall be 1.5 maximal allowable operating pressure. All exposed connection to low pressure surfaces temporarily disconnect with the main because of the main renewals of the other planned work shall be soap. Test the operating pressure of the entire surface line is checked for the leakage of the combustible gas indicator both the time on of the turn on and on the following day. Inactive surface lines. Inactive surface lines include the job of inspect the leakage surface they would maintain in accordance with the applicable provision of this part. Inactive steel surface line with not under cathodic protection include the job of the may remove the conditions established in section 252, 727 of the D of the part A over the period of not more than 6 years of the subject for the following condition. During the third year of the inactive, the operator must conduct with the survey with the potential for use with no definite plan with the use. Disconnect the survey of the main complying with the subdivision D with the section purge the surface and seal with the open end. Inactive surface lines with the definite plan for the use for the remain under the conditions established in section 255, 727 of the D with the part of any of the actual 3-year period provided by the operator reactivate service. Disconnect the surface of the main and complying with the subdivision D with the section purge the surface and seal with the open ends of the end. 6-year inactivity, whatever the surface connection of the main located under the pavement active, the surface line may be disconnected unpaved area now closer than 10 meters, feet, or 3 meters for the building subject to the following requirements. Record active. Inactive surface stub is maintained with the location of these facilities. The shall be cleared and noted on the map of the record of the gas distribution system. This information will use to mark these facilities prior to third-party excavation activity for use with the leakage survey of the leakage investigation procedures. Any steel surface stub that have the appropriately sized sacrificial anoid attached consistent with the good cathodic protection practices whenever active surface line and surface stub is exposed to the main association with the other operation, maintenance, and construction activities. It must be disconnected, main purged, and open and sealed unless there is a definite plan for future use. Whenever inactive surface line or surface stub is found with leaking or damage, it must be disconnected at the main and purged and the open end sealed. Alright, abandonment of active facility. Each operator should provide operating maintenance plan with abandonment of the deactivation of the pipeline, including the provision meeting each of the requirement of the section. Each pipeline abandoned with the place and then must be disconnected with also with the supply gas purge, gas sealed at the end of the exact of the pipeline renewed. Let the purge volume gas small, but there is no potential outage except for the surface lines. Each inactive pipeline not being maintained under this part must be disconnected from also with the supply with the gas purge with the gas sealed at the end of the except for the pipeline even to be purged when the volume of the gas is small. There is no potential hazard. Whereas if the customer is discontinued one of the following, the valve of the code to prevent the flow of the gas if the customer must provide with a locking device other than means designed to prevent opening of the valve. Person other than the authorized operator of the mechanical device fitting of the preventing flow of the gas must be installed with a surface meter assembly. Customer piping must be physically disconnected with the gas supply with the open and piping end sealed. If the air is used for purging, the operator shall ensure the combustible mixture is present and after purging each abandoned valve vault must be filled with a suitable compacted material for each abandoned pipeline facility cross over the under through the commercial navigable water. Last operative of the facility shall file a report upon the abandonment of the facility in accordance with Title 49, 192, 727 G as described in Section 10.2 of this title. Compressor station procedure for the gas compressor units. For each operator shall establish starting operating shutdown procedure for the gas compressor units. Compressor station inspection testing relief device except for rupture disc. Each pressure relief the device compressor station must be inspected tested in accordance with section 739 and 743 of this part. But must be operated periodically to determine the opening with the correct set pressure. Any defect and inadequate if found with a properly repaired or replace. Each remotely controlled device shall be inspected tested interval of not exceed 15 months, at least once each calendar year to determine that they function properly. Compressor station additional inspection. All stations should be inspected except the vibration control piping. All suspect configurations should be correctly properly. All automatic combustible gas alarms, automatic shut-off valve systems of compressor station should be inspected weekly. Compressor station isolation of the equipment and maintenance alteration. Each operator establishes a procedure for the maintaining compressor station include the provision of isolating unit section on the pipe for purging before returning to service. Compressor station storage of combustible material with flammable combustible material with quantities beyond those required with every day use other than normally use the compressor buildings must be stored in a safe distance from the compressor building above ground oil gasoline storage tanks must be protected in accordance with the National Fire Protection Association 30 described in section 10 of the title. Alright, compressor station gas detection. Each compressor building in the compressor station must be fixed with a gas detection alarm. Even if they constructed at least 50% of the bright side area with a permanent open and located with an unintended field compression station of 100,000 horsepower or less, except where other weather are shut down with the system necessary with the maintenance owner subdivision. C, with each gas detection alarm system required with this section must constantly monitor the compressor building and concentration gas of the air not more than 25% of the lower explosive limit. Even the concentration gas detected warned person about to enter the building person ensures inside of the building of the danger. Each gas detection alarm required by this section must be maintained functional proper. The maintenance must include the performance tests. Pipe type to bolt type, pipe type to bottle type gas holder. Whenever the pipe type to bottle type gas holder is found, it should be removed and abandoned unless specifically approval of the grant is continued for use. Pressure limiting regulating station inspection testing. Each pressure limiting station release device expect the rusher device pressure regulating system of equipment must subject to the intervals not exceed the 15-month at least once calendar inspection test to good mechanical condition, adequate standout point capacity, reliable the operation of the server which is employed, except for the provided in subdivision B of the section, the set of the function correct pressure consistent with the pressure limited section 255-201B of this part. Then 4, the properly installed product with dirt liquids or other conditions to prevent proper operation. For steel pipelines, maximal allowable pressure determined in the section 255-619C with the part with the maximal allowable pressure. Work pressure is 60 psi gauge or more with the control of the relief pressure. If the maximum power produced, the hoop stress with greater than 72% yield strength plus or minus 4%. Unknown percentages measure the prevent unsafe operation pipeline consideration operating maintenance history. And if during annual and any other regulating station inspection, the inspector finds that the regulator is not adequately protected with the dirt and liquids does not respond properly to the performance step of the internal inspection should be conducted within parts of the overhaul to the extent of the necessary operating condition. All operating pressure regulator stations such as field regulators should be inspected at least once each month. Such inspection shall include proper test of the gas leaks and test combustible gas indicating instrument should be conducted for the operating regulator stations containing the vaults pits, other enclosed below grades, unventilated above ground building areas. All stations shall be inspected periodically except for the vibration controlling pipe. All subject configuration shall be corrected promptly. All combustible gas alarms shall be inspected in accordance with the manufacturer recommended instructions. Pressure regulating, limiting over pressure protection. Individual serve with the line directly connected with the production, gathering, transmission pipeline section. Apply with the expert with the providing subdivision C with this section. And any serve with the directly connected with the production, gathering, transmission pipeline that is not operated by with the distribution system. Each pressure regulating limited device, relief device, except the rupture disc, automatic showed up to the associated equipment that must be inspected with the test with at least once every 3 calendar years, not exceeding 39 months. Determine good mechanical condition, adequate standby capacity, the reliability operations for the employed, set up with the control, relieve with the correct pressure for the existing pressure. Section 259-197 the part with the limited pressure for the inlet of the serve the regulators PSI gauge less in case the upstream regulator failed to function properly installed, protected from dirt liquids of the condition to prevent proper operation. Section does not apply to the equipment installed with the service lines that only the server and serve that only serve engines of the power irrigation pumps. Alright, telemetry and recording device gauge. Each distribution system supplied by more than one district pressure regulating station must be equipped with a telemetering recording pressure gauge for the indicating gas pressure for the district. On distribution system supplied with a single district pressure regulating station operation to determine the necessity of installing telemetric recording gauge of the district, taking in consideration number of the company's supply operating pressure for the capacity for the installation and the other operating condition for low pressure for the distribution system. Telemetric recording pressure gauges are to be located near each district regulator outlet with the probable location minimum pressure for each of the parts part section system. The accuracy each of the recording pressure gauges are provided to maintain each operator with the location required herein. There should be tested with intervals not exceeding 15 months, at least once each calendar year. With the result of the test shall be recorded with each charter may be removed with the recording pressure gauge, but it shall be reviewed with the indication of abnormally high or low pressure for the indicating the abnormally high or low pressure for the regulator. Auxiliary equipment must be inspected with the necessary measure to take and correct any unsatisfactory operation condition. Each chart removed with the recording pressure gauge shall be marked with the name of the operator with the location of the gauge, date at which it was placed upon the gauge, with the date in which it was removed with the gauge prior to its fitting. Heart pressure limiting regulation assessing test relief device. Overpressure protection devices should be tested, place and annually determine if they are proper working condition. They should be subject to the maintenance for the overhaul. The may indicate that the head test of the overpressure protection device usually over the protection fuel piping. For example, the compressor for the compressor station should be tested and inspected in like a manner. Non-working monetary regulatory equipment should be subject to the annual performance test and should be internally inspected with the overhaul if it's required so they resolve the test. After an annual review of the required capacity for the relieving equipment each for the station should be made with these required capacity for the compared with the calculated experimental determined recorded relieving capacity installed with equipment for the operating conditions of which it works. If relieving equipment is insufficient capacity, a new additional surface shall be installed will provide additional capacity required with the station regulator and reduce and compensate with existing relief capacity. 43. Surface regulator vent inspection. Each operator shall inspect the surface regulator installed at the time of the periodic meter change at the time of the surface which has been active for the period of 2 years or more reactivated. And surface operator may elect to inspect the surface regulator interval not exceeding 20 years in lieu of the inspection at the time of the periodic metering change. Surface regulator, surface multimeter installation may not be inspected at the time of each of the individual meter change. However, each associated regulator should be inspected at least once each 20 years. The inspection surface regulator shall include with the following test: the outlet pressure test shall be taken with the minimum load condition. Minimum load condition for the purpose of this paragraph shall mean no load or pilot load only with the pressure limit. The test shall be established by this part of the operator. Pressure should be the test taken with the outlet the side of the regulator. One more appliance for the operation except for the limits of the pressure shall be established by the part. Each operator shall be inspected with each surface regulator associated with an event. Whenever the surface regulator is inspected, the inspection shall include with the test of the presence of gas, proper location, vertent, terminus, the proper side of the proper insulation, weather, insect, resistant fitting of the verification of the inside of the building, inspection of the vent line, piping is continuous, properly connected with the regulator. Immediately remedial action should be taken if any of these items do not pass the inspection. Valve maintenance transmission line. Each transmission line valve must be inspected partially operated at intervals not exceeding 12 to 18 months at least once each calendar year. Each operator must take a prompt remedial action to correct any valve found in inoperable location. All the valve of the transmission line is designed with the appropriate breakup of the drawing map for the relation of the above ground structure. So the valves associated with the covers can be readily located with the ground covered with the stone and ice. Since there is many change of the alteration of the above ground structure over the period of the accuracy of the reference point, the established should be verified at the time of the periodic inspection. At the time of the periodic inspection, valves should be checked with external leakage. Valve maintenance distribution system. Each valve give the may be necessary for the safe shutdown of the section line of the distribution system must be inspected partially operated with the intervals of the next 15 months, but at least once each calendar year, including the principal shut off the domestic regulator, station pressure, or limiting device. Each operator must take a prompt and remedial action that correct any of the valves found inoperable, and if the operator designate alternative value. Location of all the valves distribution system must be required during the emergency shut to designate with the appropriate record with the drawing the map of the relation of the above ground surface of the valve with the associated with the axis of the covers will be readily located when ground is covered with its own ice. Since there may be changed with the alteration of the ground structure over the period of time, the accuracy of reference point established shall be verified at the time of the periodic inspection. At the time of the periodic inspection, valves shall be checked external leakage. Valve maintenance surface lines, except with the provided subdivision B with the section of the buried high pressure surface line valve with exposed with the higher exterior high pressure surface line valve shall be inspected with the conjunction with the surface regulator inspection required under section 255-744 with this part. Buried surface line valves compliant with the 255-365B2 with the part shall be inspected with the intervals not exceeding 15 months, but at least once each calendar year for accessibility key alignment external leakage. Each buried surface line and valve with inspection shall determine accessible key alignment to test and allow external leakage with exposed. Each exposed exterior surface in the line valve shall be inspected accessibility external leakage. Vault maintenance. Each vault housing pressure regulating, pressure limiting equipment to have the volumetric internal content with 200 cubic feet with more, but must be inspected in intervals of 1915 months, but at least once each calendar year. The term of the good physical condition adjusts ventilated. The gas found in the vault, the equipment and vault must be inspected for the leak. Any hazard leak of the found must be repaired immediately. Venting equipment must be inspected to determine the function properly. Each vault cover must be inspected and ensure that it does not present a hazard to public safety. Alright, preventing accidental ignition. Each operator shall take the following minimum step to minimize danger and accidental ignition of the gas in any structure or area where the presence of the gas constitutes hazard or fire explosion. Where the hazard amount of the gas is being vented into the open air, each potential source of the ignition must be removed from the area of the fire extinguisher must be provided. Gas and electric welding, cutting may not be performed on pipe. The pipe components that contain the combustible mixture of the gas area and the air in the area work for. Warning signs are to be posted where applicable. Precautions to prevent uncontrolled, unsafe, static electrical discharge from plastic pipe are to be taken. Alright, caulk, bell, and spigot joints. Each cast iron caulk, bell, spigot joint that is subject to the pressure of 25 psi gauge or more must be sealed with a material device which, if it does not reduce flexibility of the joint, permanent bound with either chemically, mechanical, or both, with a bell and spigot in the middle surface of the adjacent pipe with the metal surface of the seals and bonds or manner of the meets of the strength of the environmental chemical compatibility requirements, section 255.53 AB, 255.143 of this part. Each cast iron caulk, bell, spigot joint is this exposed for any reason must be sealed by means of other than caulking. Or protecting cast iron pipelines. When operator has knowledge sled pour over the segment of the buried cast iron pipeline disturbed, the following actions must be taken. The segment of the pipeline may be protected when necessary against the damage of the during disturbance of vibration from the heavy construction area, equipment, trains, trucks, buses, and the blasting impact force of the vehicle with the earth movement, apparent future excavation near the pipeline, other foreseeable outside force which may be subject to the segment of the pipeline bending stress. As soon as feasible, the appropriate steps must be taken to provide permanent protection for the distributed segment with the damage of the might result with external loads, including compliance with the applicable performance section 255, 317, 319, 361, B and D of this part. Alright, replacement exposed undermining cast iron piping. When any cast iron 8 inches or less nominal diameter have been exposed with undermining excavation of 36 inches or greater in width of the proposed the work other than the normal gas operation maintenance work performed exposed cast iron main, one of these following actions may be taken listed in order of preference. Cast iron main is to be replaced by the third party construction activity occurring in the cast iron main is to be surveyed leakage daily until the contractor allows access to the excavation area for the replacement. After access is allowed, the operator is immediately replaced with the effective cast iron main. Maintain daily surveillance with the open vent hole with the replace with the cast iron main as soon as practicable. For right angle crossing cast iron main to the length of the replace shall be equal to less than width of the excavation plus with twice the distance of the top of the main from the bottom of the trench. For crossing of the cast iron main to the other right angle, the length of the replacement should be increased so that the cast iron pipe will be removed within the trench settlement area from the gas main, assuming the angle of the repose of the 45 degrees from the bottom of the trench. When replacement with the cast iron main is required, it shall extend approximately equal on both sides of the said excavation. Replacement of the cast iron main parallel excavation. If the excavation is made parallel with the cast iron gas main, the 8 inch of the less nominal diameter said excavation is not adequately short to protect with the cast iron main against the movement. The cast iron main must be replaced with more than half of the pipe. The diameter lies above the line projected at the angle above the horizontal equal to the angle of the repose of the soil conditions may be encountered with the starting with the bottom of the excavation with the side nearest the main. Placement is completed prior to third party construction activity if possible. Otherwise, replacement commencement immediately after the contractor allows access to the excavation area. The replacement of the area to be maintained under the daily leakage survey until the replacement is complete. Alright, joining plastic pipe with the heat fusion equipment and maintenance for the calibration. Each operator must maintain equipment to use the joint plastic pipe in accordance with manufacturer recommendation practice with written procedures that have been proven in test experience to produce acceptable joints. And that was maintenance for Title 816, Department of Service, Chapter 3, Gas Utility, Subchapter C, 255, Transmission, Distribution, Gas Lines, New York Codes and Rules, Regulations. Maintenance.